North Carolina Sports Betting 101, back with another episode. I'm Tim Donnelly, and we're once again doing our best to make the complicated world of sports gambling a little bit less complicated, a little bit more simple. And today we're focusing on a player prop betting, player props. You can reference them a few different ways. But this is actually something that, even if you are an experienced sports gambler, right, and we're not alluding to anything illegal or anything under the table, but maybe you had a guy, right? Everybody's got a guy. Maybe you had a guy that would take bets prior to mobile sports gambling being legal here in the state of North Carolina a few months ago. They probably weren't taking player props, right? They may have taken spreads. They may have taken over-unders. They may have taken money line bets. They may have taken even futures. But probably not taking player props simply because the work, the volume, the amount of numbers and lines that would have to be set get a little aggressive. But with this mobile sports betting kind of wave, this mobile sports betting phenomena becoming part of our daily lives, it is something that I think warrants a bit further explanation. It's something I know that when sports gambling became legal in the state that I was living in, it was one of those things that I became very enamored with because, if you follow sports enough, particularly if you follow a certain team, you get a feeling for when somebody is due. You get a feeling for, I know this guy better than most, and I know against this team and this venue, he's going to have a big game. And prior to that, all you would do is try to, prior to player props, all you would do is try to translate that into a team situation, right? I know my quarterback's going to have a big game, so maybe that team's more likely to win. I'll bet on them to win. But now it's, I know my quarterback's going to have a big game. I'm going to bet on his over in pass yards. And you can find a way to really hone in on it. Now, player props, and you'll notice this, they oftentimes aren't available until much closer to game time. You may be able to find, as we've used in other videos as an example, team lines or over-unders for Panthers week 1, even though we're recording this in the middle of the summer, in the middle of June. You're not going to find, at least very rarely are you going to find player props for a game that far in advance. However, we can use something like the NBA Finals, which are going on as we record this here on DraftKings Sportsbook, which you can see now on your screen. We can use something like the NBA Finals as a player prop example, which is what we're going to do right now. If you scroll across here, you can look at it. There's the game lines, there's quick hits, there's game leaders. We're going to focus on something simple like player points. Now, that's not the only player prop. Player threes, player rebounds, There's combos. You can do points plus rebounds plus assists, steals, blocks, defensive stats. There really is everything. And that's what I was alluding to when I said, there's a lot that goes into these player props. So if you're looking at the screen now, the player prop, you might just look at it and say, Jason Tatum, right? He is a Duke product. He's many see as the best player on the Celtics. His over-under for points scored is sitting at 25.5. And that means you're just betting on Jason Tatum. You do not care if the Celtics win the game. You do not care if it goes to overtime. You do not care if Jaylen Brown has 45 points. The only thing you're focused on in this one is Jason Tatum and how many points he scores. If he scores 26 points and you bet the over, you win. If he scores 25 points, you lose. And anything in either direction, you see how that goes. It's traditional betting odds, which we've been over. Minus 105 means you have to bet $105 to win 100, or $10 and whatever that is. You can do the math to win $10. You can parlay these, which is something that combines a few of our previous episodes. You can look at this and say, Jason Tatum over 25.5 points. And if you want to go cross sport with it, you could go to the Stanley Cup Finals and take Connor McDavid goals scored and take the over in that. You can parlay those together, do something creative in that respect. You can even do that in the same game, and we're going to make a whole video on what a same-game parlay is and how you might be able to have some fun with those, but just know that those are mostly going to center around some form of player prop and sometimes combined with a team bet. It is a bit, when you look at player props, and this is where player props become maybe a little controversial or maybe a little more frustrating. Player props are the ones that regulators are most afraid of. There's actually some legislation in North Carolina that is being proposed or discussed at the state government level, which would ban player props in college sports. If you pay attention to the NBA, Jonte Porter, formerly of the Raptors, was banned for life from the NBA for what appeared to be manipulating player props. Because if somebody is, say, they have an over-under of 5 points, right? They're going to score 5 points, and that's the number. If you bet the under on a player, as soon as they step foot on a court, right, as soon as they are a participant in the game, that bet is live. Even if they play 30 seconds and get hurt, even if they play 2 minutes and get sick, even if something crazy, they get ejected, right? They throw a punch and get ejected, that bet is live. So if somebody bets a large amount of money on a player to be under 4.5 points scored, and they play 2 minutes and then check themselves out for being sick, that's going to be a massive red flag, and the reports are out there. That's what set them off about Jonte Porter. So the regulators are very worried about this. There's nothing we can do about that, right? That's up to the regulators to suss out that type of kind of nefarious action. But it does make you vulnerable. If you're betting a player prop, it does make you vulnerable to the little things that impact individual players' performance, such as injuries, sickness, or game flow. For example, you may think, we'll use a running back. You may think Christian McCaffrey, sorry Panthers fans, but he's out there crushing it for the Niners. You may think he's due. He's in rhythm. He's playing great. He's healthy. He's going to have a massive game. All right, so you bet on his over in rushing yards. Player prop, Christian McCaffrey, over in rushing yards, because you know he's in the zone. Well, the Panthers come out and they're down 21-0 at the end of the first quarter, right? There's a pick six, there's a returned kick, they're down 21-0. Niners abandon the run game. Even if they come back to win the game, Brock Purdy has a huge day, he throws them back into the game, Christian McCaffrey probably won't hit his over in rushing yards through no fault of his own, right? He may be in rhythm. You may have been right. He's healthy. He's ready to run. He's ready to go, but he doesn't get that opportunity because of game flow. Or what if you bet on Bryce Young's over in passing yards and he goes out there and there's a big hit on the first play of the game and he goes into concussion protocol and he doesn't play the rest of the game? You lose that bet even though he played one play. So you need to make sure you're prepared for that, right? You need to make sure you understand the bets you're getting into. Player props can be fun because, sometimes you don't want to worry about who's winning the game. Or sometimes maybe it's such a lopsided game that you don't, you wouldn't make enough money betting on the favorite and you think the favorite's going to win or whatever it is. So you bet on a player prop and it gives you something else to root for. I know guys that love to have an offensive player on both teams in a player prop, so they're rooting for something specific, almost like fantasy football, every time the game is not in special teams. So there's some fun things you can do with it, but just know there are some complications when you get down into the nitty-gritty on player props. And also know you can kind of give yourself paralysis by overanalysis with player props. And what I mean by that is, just in an NBA game, right? Back to our screen here, we're looking at all of the different props you can put on players. Player points, how many threes they make, combinations, points plus assists, points plus rebounds plus assists, rebounds, assists, defensive stats like blocks and steals, head-to-head player props. You can do something like who's going to have more points, Kyrie Irving or Jaylen Brown. You can make your pick there. Halves. How many points will you have in a half? How many points will a player have in a quarter? There's a ton of props that's just one NBA game. If you open it up to NFL or baseball or hockey, there's a multitude of player props. There really are limitless possibilities. So you can really hone in on something you like, or you can find yourself staring at these pages like this one here on DraftKings Sportsbook for hours and hours and not making much progress and maybe not even making a bet, which could be fun. It's like picking your favorite Netflix show. Sometimes the fun is in the scrolling and deciding what you want, but just know that exists. So So that's player props. That's basically what we have here. Make sure you're understanding if you're going on with our video series here in North Carolina Sports Betting 101. Make sure you're aware you really have a good grasp on player props because they come back in with future videos like same game parlays and teasers and everything else. So make sure you have a good grasp of this one, and we'll see you next time on North Carolina Sports Betting 101.